was your well, somebody had to do it moment. Story 1 in elementary school, my class went on a trip to a campground nature reserve thing. They took us on a tour and stopped around various plants to inform us about them. When talking about one of the plants, they told us that they didn't know whether or not they were poisonous. I ate some. It had no discernible effect on me. I got sent home. I did it for science. Story 2, reporting my father for molesting my sister. I was 12. Edit, thank you for all the support, guys. It was a hard situation, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone. Edit 2, thank you for the gold. Kind stranger, my sister and I are 28 and 27 now. It was a long time ago, and we both received therapy. My sister refuses to talk about it now to anyone. I wish she would. Story 3, New Year's Eve, when I was around 14 years old at a friend's house with no parental supervision. The older brother pulled out a quarter stick of dynamite to light off at midnight. It was a cold Michigan winter, and so the smart thing to do was to open the door wall, light the stick, and throw it from inside the house. Well, he dropped it lit on the floor. After we stared at each other for what seemed like an eternity, my soccer skills rushed in, and I kicked it out the door. It went about 10 feet, and then exploded. Could have lost a leg, but, well, somebody had to do it. Story 4, leaving first from friends' houses. That moment when everyone is huddled at the front door, pointless conversation, hand on the doorknob. It'll be 10 feet down the drive, clicking my doors open. Story 5, I used to work for a college. My route to work took me through the college library. While walking through, I happened to glance down the stacks, that's what library folk call the rows of bookshelves, and I see a girl having a seizure. I yell for help, drop my books in my jacket, and go run to her. I see she's about to bite her tongue, so I jam a copy of To Kill a Mockingbird between her teeth to stop that from happening. I talk to her, letting her know that someone is there for her, and I asked her if she knew I was there, if she could see and hear. I told her to blink if she could understand me. Thank God, she blinked enough to signal yes. I've never seen anyone blink that much. She had genuine relief in her eyes to see me. The campus nurse finally started to arrive after I had taken the book out of her mouth, and the spasms were calming down. She could move independently, and she was shaking from shock at what happened. The nurse started asking her questions, and she said something I thought was odd. She said it had happened once or twice before, and she had been having headaches for the last few years, always in the same place. The nurse asked her if they wanted to call an ambulance for her, and she said no, that her parents' insurance wouldn't cover it. I jumped back into the conversation and said that I would happily drive her to the emergency room. She just looked at me for a few seconds and nodded. In the car, I talked to her for a little while, telling her it would be okay, all that stuff. We also introduced each other. She had the same name as a Disney princess. The campus nurse had since called her mother, and she got to the hospital shortly after we had gotten to the emergency room. Well, this woman lit in her daughter immediately, saying things like, "Oh, it's just your headaches again. You're such a drama queen, and why can't you just it up?" Not listening to a damned word her daughter said. She just stood there, looking at her shoes sadly. I didn't even really think. I grabbed the mother by the shoulder and wrenched her around to look me in the eyes. "Ma'am, with all due respect, you're dead wrong. I have seen people have seizures before. I have someone in my family with similar issues. Your daughter was having a full-blown episode. I had to jam a book in her teeth to keep her from biting her tongue. There is something seriously wrong with her, and if you even pretend to love her, you will get her looked at today." Then I turned around and walked out. It wasn't until 2 weeks later that I found out the last part. I was at my desk at the college, and the same girl comes walking in through the door, wearing a bandana on her head. She told me that after I left, her mother had the docs give her a CT scan of her head. She had a fluid pocket build up, and she said they told her she would not have lived out the week if they hadn't caught it that day. The 2 weeks I hadn't heard anything was her recovery from the surgery they performed that day. She told me I saved her life with tears in her eyes, and to this day, I have never seen eyes so full of gratitude. TLDR, save a girl's life by giving her mother a tongue lashing. Edit in regards to the putting something in her mouth thing. I know now that you are not supposed to do this. The incident above was more than 8 years ago, and since then I joined the military and learned in their combat lifesaver course that doing that is an urban legend. So, while it did bother me, I'm still glad I was there, old place literature or not. Story 6, chose to make the phone call to my roommate's dad to tell him he died, rather than having the police tell him. I still feel horrible about it because I told him Greg had a medical emergency. His dad had to ask me, did he die? Because I couldn't bring myself to say so. Edit, thank for the hug and support. Want to clarify that I'm not a dude. Story 7, we had this strange rule growing up where we weren't allowed to take shits in my parents' bathroom. So I try to time my shits for when they weren't home. Nobody tells me where I can and can't. Nobody. Story 8, reported my boss for harassment, bullying, and blackmail, and being generally incompetent. Nobody else wanted to, so I thought it my turn and proceeded to make her life a misery. Story 9, I accidentally signed up for a workshop on how to work with people who had cognitive impairments. Not many people sign up for these workshops, An instructor said they had an immediate need for another teacher at a school for young adults with severe cognitive impairments. I was the only one in the room with a teaching certificate, and I was only waiting tables at the time, so I volunteered. I ended up working at that school for a year before they found a permanent teacher. I learned so much about humanity in that classroom. Edit 1, wow. Thank you for the response and for the gold. Edit 2, several people asked what I learned. In short, so much. When I first went into the classroom, I saw several young adults who couldn't talk, couldn't go to the bathroom by themselves, and couldn't feed themselves. I didn't know how to communicate with them, much less teach them. I learned pretty quickly that they're just like everyone else in many ways. For the most part, we all have the same emotions, from happiness and pride to guilt and fear. Even highly autistic students feel loneliness and crave attention. They just crave it in a different way than the rest of us are used to. And no one wants to disappoint someone they hold dear. We all have a sense of humor, no matter how twisted. Food is the first universal motivator. Attention is the second. Pretty much everyone just wants a hand to hold or a body to hug, or at least someone to look at them. Everyone needs dignity. Everyone can learn something. We just need a consistent, rewarding routine that slowly, sometimes very, very slowly steps up the challenge. Like most high schoolers, my students would try to manipulate me to get what they want, and they'd walk all over me if they thought I was afraid of them. When I was trying to teach them something for the first time, they'd play dumb and put on an act until I proved to them that I wasn't buying it. Then they started to work harder for me. TLDR, we're all the same. Story 10, I wrote a suicide note for my sister. Her suicidal thoughts weren't being taken seriously by medical professionals, and she needed proper care. That sucked. Story 11, I recently attempted suicide and came very, very close to achieving that. When people see me, they often don't know how to respond. So I take it upon myself by singing Guess Who's Back, back again. Someone has to break the silence, right? Edit, wow. Never had a comment with over 1,000 upvotes. Thanks for all the messages of support. For the most part, one, I'm doing better, still in therapy 2x a week, but hopefully now on the right meds. It is awesome to have so much support from my family, friends, and now you all as I learn to deal with my bipolar diagnosis. For those of you telling me, I only try to commit suicide for attention. You are right. I quit my job as a teacher, spent $30K over 2 years of treatment, moved 6 states back home to live with my father because I ran out of money, and am embarrassingly going through the government welfare process just so I can jokingly sing a few Eminem lyrics to my baffled friends who heard the news from my twin and didn't know what to say. Too bad, I didn't want more attention, or I might have even told them myself. And you're correct, if you go through my history, I do like talking about it online. Do you know how awkward it is to bring up the issue of taking your own life when you want to talk about it often? Geez, man, I've only got so many jokes. Story 12, fighting 3 guys at once to defend a very small pacifist. I got my handed to me, but I kicked the out of one dude's testicles because rules, that's why, and bullies would do again. Story 13, at a kid's party. I was the only adult not drinking and having a good time because there was a pool with no fence around it. I stood there watching it like a hawk while trying to act like I wasn't judging everyone. Everyone was surprised when I fished a 4-year-old out of the water. They all just stood there while I hopped in to get her. Story 14, older woman, I would guess in her 70s, came into the movie theater I work at, and in the middle of the movie, she went into the restroom, her pants, took them off, walked out into the lobby wearing no pants, was streaming down her legs, leaving a trail. Guess which minimum wage worker had to clean it up? Story 15, I was walking with a friend and came across a snake with its head smashed in, but it was still alive, slithering in sad little circles. I begged my friend to put it out of its misery. I love snakes and had never killed anything before that point, but he was too queasy about it. I had to stomp the thing to death, and I cried the whole time. Story 16, told a friend of mine that he was being cheated on by his girlfriend. A lot of people knew, and I hesitated to do it because she was friends with my girlfriend at the time, but I remember a guy I knew that did the same thing for me when an ex was cheating on me while she was at college, and I thought it was the right thing to do because I definitely appreciated it. It made things a bit awkward for a bit, but I don't regret it all. Story 17, standing up to the principal of my high school for making a very anti-gay comment to the only gay kid in my school. Edit, I've gotten quite a few messages from people saying they couldn't see my story in the comments. So here it is. I was new to this school, so I hadn't really found a solid group of friends yet. We were all eating lunch, and I just happened to be sitting next to this gay kid. We'll call him Mikey. Nobody thought differently about him. He was genuinely one of the nicest guys I knew. Well, my school had this rule where you couldn't have bags laying in the walkways to make sure nobody tripped and hurt themselves. Mikey had a bit of a feminine backpack, and it happened to be laying in the walkway. So while Mikey was putting his tray away, the principal walked by, picked up the bag, and asked which one of the girls it belonged to. Someone I was sitting with said it was Mickey's, and the principal, without hesitation, said of course it belongs to the What self-respecting man would have a bag like that? My whole table was speechless. I stood up and said, "You should be ashamed of yourself. You're supposed to be one of the most responsible people in this school, yet you sound more immature than every kid in this cafeteria. And we say some stupid. The fact that I even have to tell you this is appalling. I was shitting my pants the entire time I was saying that." He walked away without saying a word. I went from the very quiet, shy, new kid to being pretty well known after that. Story 18. My friend's wife was being an obese, spoiled, entitled wife who constantly picked on people out of her own insecurity. When she made fun of my friend for tripping while on a jog, I said at least he's not fat-headed. In case people were wondering the reaction, it went like this. It was immediately followed by deafening silence. I wasn't looking for a giggle, per se. I felt appropriate to the thread. Well, somebody had to do it. I was in a middle chair in front of the TV, where there were two couches next to me. To the right, a love seat. To the left, a sofa. It was a room with the husband, my friend, and his wife, my runner friend, and of course two of her friends, a coworker of the wife who the wife likes to pretend that she's her BFF, and a decently long-time friend of the wife. In my peripheral vision, I see the runner crack a smile, possibly a pity gesture, not unlike getting a smirk and nod from the priest before you face a firing squad. Next to the runner was the husband Agape, who might have had his heart stopped having witnessed Leonidas merely scratch Xerxes, only to get brutally murdered by him and the backups. I do like to think that somewhere there was somebody had to do it. This all took place in a time frame of maybe 3 seconds, enough for her to grab the remote, turn the TV off, and unleash all. Mind you, I said that to her, making casual eye contact with her, so I saw the immediate transition from haha, let's laugh at someone's expense to how dare you make fun of a woman's weight. The eyes turned bloodshot and welled up. The forlorn look of insecurity eventually faced her husband, then returned to me and transitioned into the look of absolute blind anger. The ladies followed the transitions too, but instead of forlorn to anger, it was "are you kidding me" to empathy to anger. Seriously, she was up there in anger, couldn't even say a single word for about a minute, just short syllables mixed with tears and bodily twitches. Then it was followed by a very precise "FUCKU, I want you on my house." I, with a smug look, accept my fate and strut on my way out while the husband says, "Wes, wait, bad idea." The wife says, "Are you seriously defending him?" And then followed by her friends on the same couch with the typical, "Yeah, seriously, and what is wrong with you?" statement additions. Then there's the runner who really just wanted to go home wishing he had never tripped in the first place. The husband and wife go into the kitchen. It's only a room over and isn't even closed off by any door, so we hear every word. And then there's the wife blaring at the husband about how Wes is in and how women are objectified every single day, and that's the last thing anybody should ever tolerate. All the while, her friends are pretty much telling me the same thing about women's body issues. After a few minutes of being lectured and yelled, I start to walk out, and immediately the two girls follow me to yell some more. The runner reluctantly follows me. He's got two choices: listen to a one-sided marriage, or hear two women bicker at a guy who's heading home. At least the latter gives you fresh air. Eventually, they walk to their cars and leave. As him at the end of his driveway, the husband runs out after us and says, "I just want to drink something." I didn't ask anything of specifics of his reaction. He revealed it to us when we were maybe 10 shots in. He gave drunken confessions that he hated the consequences of what I did, but loved that someone finally stood up to the minotaur of the struggling labyrinth that is his marriage. So we walked him home at 4 a.m., only to find that his wife was still up. I walked in, and you could tell she literally had nothing left to say to me, or anyone else for that matter. Not even a before-bed last word by me. But that's the thing about Scotch. Kids, it turns even the Mort Goldman of men into William Wallace. I walked back to the chair and claimed that throne like God Robert Baratheon and turned on some SportsCenter with the guys. TLDR left the wife speechless. She and her friends lash out at me. Husband tries to foolishly defend me. Drinking commences down the street. Husband admits him the hero he deserved, just not the one he needed right then. Walked him back. Wife is emotionally catatonic. I pass out with the guys in the living room. I pushed a girl into the lake while she was showing off her fancy little cartwheels. It got annoying fast, and well, someone had to do it. Story 19, well, Refrozen was turning into a dumping ground for Elsa only and Elzana posts. I created Random Master Race. I now have half of the fandom praising me as a god, and the other half wanting to kill me. That's fun. Story 20, this didn't happen to me, but to my grandma. She currently works as a bartender for the American Legion, and one day, some random guy walks in and runs straight into the bathroom without saying a word to anyone. After about 20 minutes, he walks out, goes to his car, and leaves. Some other guy goes to the bathroom after him and runs out swearing like a sailor. It turns out the mystery man that had just left had released the inner contents of his bowels all over the bathroom. On the walls, the floor, the door, everywhere. He even left his soaked underwear sitting in the trash next to the door. So what does my grandma do? She goes in there and cleans it all up by herself because nobody else wanted to do it. A couple weeks later, the same guy comes back. My grandma recognizes him and perma bans him from the bar. TLDR, my grandma mean cleaning machine. Story 21, tell a kid who kept following me and my friend around that we weren't friends, that he was not part of the group, and that he was no longer welcome to our lunch table. At first, we tried to include him, but he kept trying to pick on one of the kids in group to assert dominance and carve a spot for himself in the group's hierarchy. We found his blog. At first, we just ignored him and stopped inviting him when we hung out, but when he showed up to our Christmas party uninvited, it was the last straw. Story 22, finish a test in record time and sit there for 15 to 30 minutes waiting for someone else to go up, staring at every other person that isn't in a face-down comatose that has the aroma of gray matter, fresh printer ink, and paper, maintaining eye contact with the teacher at the front of the class. Every once I say to get up and turn the test first. Instead, I pretend to look over my test, telling myself I refuse to submit. I finished first. I deserve to sleep. I deserve to master pen tricks. While they all slave away, stressing about their answers, not me, I control my fate. I decide to stand up and walk to the teacher and leave a paper on the desk. The teacher, who is actually a middle-aged female, waiting for her boyfriend to propose to her over the impending Christmas break, complains about how her relationship has lasted 9 years, and he hasn't popped the question. I then sit back at my desk and continue to go over the test and sneak a nap. The paper was actually my number and note telling her it's not her fault and that I'm down to. Someone has to give it to her. She didn't respond, but she gave me an A on the test. What's the kicker, you ask? I didn't actually take the test. Edit my most upvoted comment. And it's not even embarrassing. Oh yeah. Story 23, my dad had announced that he was unhappy with his and my mom's marriage and that he was leaving. A month and a half passed, and he still hadn't left, so I took things into my own hands. My mom was still in love and emotionally broken, and even though we all knew my dad was seeing someone, Mom didn't have the heart to tell him to leave already, so I did. I was 14 when I packed my dad's bags and told him to leave. After that, my mom became bulimic and started smoking like I had never seen her do before. Sure, I had to step up and carry the weight my dad left behind, but still I don't regret doing what I did. Story 24, I was driving on the freeway with my girlfriend, and this car came out of nowhere and almost hit us and 2 other cars near us while swerving recklessly. I got my girlfriend to call 911 as we want to catch up with him and was talking about how we would see that guy flipped in a ditch if he kept driving like that. Sure enough, when I caught up to him, he struck another vehicle going about 90 to 100, and it sent the other car rolling and his car off the road into the embankment, where his car cartwheeled twice and rolled 2 more times before landing back on the wheels. The driver of that one jumped out and took off running, leaving a woman and her 5-year-old son in the back of the car. I stopped and ran up to the now on fire car, yelling to make sure nobody else was in it, which there was. The door wouldn't open, so I had to break the glass out and help pull the 2 people out. I turned around to see every other car just keep on driving by and looking, not even willing to help. Somebody had to do it since apparently everybody else is just there to watch the show. I have pictures of both cars that rolled. Turns out the guy that ran had outstanding warrants. Stay classy, Seattle edit here are the pictures. Story 25, this will be buried because I'm late to this, but one time when I was still in college, I saw someone standing in the middle of the sidewalk when everyone was headed to class. They kept getting past, and they weren't really looking at anything, so it seemed odd. I went back, and turns out they were blind. I asked if they needed directions or help, and she told me she was lost. Helped her get to the building she was looking for. TLDR. Helped a blind person find the building they were looking for on campus. Story 26, last week. Starting from Sunday, March 31st, my female friend started having crazy abdominal pain. We live on the campus dorms. By Wednesday night, she was crying in my arms from the pain. Never seen her like that, too. I looked it up, figured that it was probably an ovarian cyst or an appendicitis. She didn't want to do anything about it. The following night was worst. She still didn't want to go to the ER, didn't want to skip work, classes, didn't realize she could get a serious infection and die. The other guys we hung out with didn't get it either. I woke them up and told them to give us a lift to the nearest hospital. We pretty much had to drag her kicking and screaming. By the time we were there, it got worse. I stayed alone with her, held her while she was telling she wanted to die. I skipped triage and brought her to the ER, telling the doctors to help her right now. They hooked up on morphine. It barely helped. I spent the night with her. I comforted her. I had seen her suffer a lot before. She's been raped, beat on, depressed, traumatized. She doesn't deserve this on top of it all. I don't ever want to feel that helpless again. I was almost unbearable saying her like that. But there was no way I was leaving her alone. Diagnosis, she had a 5 centimeters ovarian cyst. I didn't even know that was possible. She was operated last Friday. She's now home to her parents until the end of the week. She's doing better. Story 27 on my school bus, this kid got a really bad blood nose. All his friends started laughing at him, and this girl handed him paper as a joke to mop it all up. So after about 5 minutes of deliberation of whether I should help him cause I was incredibly shy, I finally decided to give him a packet of tissues I had. I was shaking as I did it and was so nervous because I'm just like that. It was a pretty proud moment for myself. Not that special edit wow, I got a lot more comments than I thought I would, and they're all so nice. Thanks, I feel more special now. Story 28, I work in motel. And the local police don't bother with our calls due to the fact that their priority is the airport and high-end hotels. One night, I was making my walk around, picking up trash, and making sure everything was sound and safe. When I looked over to a window that had the blinds half open, I saw a man holding a woman on the bed with his hand on her neck, choking her, and his other fist in the air. She was fighting him off, and I knew she was in trouble. I dialed 911 and reported it, only to be told, well, send someone as soon as we can, which in this area means we don't care, so I threw my phone in my pocket with the operator on the line and broke into the room and tackled the guy assaulting the woman down. I secured his hand behind his back, nearly dislocating his shoulder. What I didn't see was the other 4 guys in the room. They proceeded to pull me off and beat me half to death. The woman tried to pull them off of me, but to no avail. After 3 broken ribs, severe bruising to my lungs, sides and face, and a sprained wrist, I hobbled back to my office after everyone, including the woman, had ran off, leaving me and injured on the floor of the room. Cops showed up 5 minutes after I had started bandaging myself up. They asked, why did you go in there? And I swear to God, the only thing I said was, well, he could have killed her. And if you guys wouldn't show up, someone else had to do it. Edit him still paying off the emergency room bills. HR claimed I voluntarily got involved, and it wasn't a work-related injury. Story 29, I was a lifeguard at summer day camp. One of the campers had autism spectrum disorder, but it was mild enough that the camp allowed him to come. One day, he lashed out violently towards one of the counselors. I was on my stand by the pool when my boss comes running over. I don't remember what she said. I just remember turning to see the boy running for the hills and a counselor lying against a steel door. He had thrown her against it. I jumped off my stand and just ran after the kid because I didn't know where he would go. There was a couple acres of woods he could have run off to. I catch up and stop him. I got him to sit down, and we just talked. Some of the other counselors and staff started coming over, but I waved him off because he said he would only talk to me. I don't know why he responded to me and not anyone else. I just made him comfortable. Eventually, his mom picked him up, and he never came back. I don't remember a lot about him, other than that I felt bad for him. The kid was alone. At least for an hour, I think he felt like he had one friend. Story 30, someone I wasn't particularly friends with got way too drunk at my ex's house party and passed out in a bathtub. He in the bathtub, I pushed it down the drain with a spoon. Lost a part of myself that night, and he still doesn't know he did it. Story 31, punching this kid in the face my senior year after he pushed my friend he was dating into a locker pretty hard. So I walked up and punched him directly in the face and snapped his nose. I was 18, and he was 15. I had a teacher back me up saying I was reacting to a potentially dangerous situation. Story 32, a drunk guy came over to my house the other day. He stepped on one of our 5-week-old kittens. He crushed its lungs, but it was still breathing. I unfortunately had to be the one to put it down. I haven't cried like that in a while. Story 33, I always take the last item left on the platey in the box. When there's a group eating, I can't stand waiting around for everyone to decide who's going to take it. Story 34, probably too late to the party, but my friend and I were at a dollar store buying drinks. An old man with what looked like Parkinson's was ahead of us, and a few people being served at the register. The clerk tallied up the items, and the man put them back in his bag he brought before getting his money out. The poor bloke didn't have enough money. It broke my heart to see him try and figure out what to give back and not buy. He ended up taking a lot out of his bag and was mumbling. I ended up jumping the line and paying for the items. Afterwards, he shook my hand and said thanks, and it seemed like it was a struggle for him just to do that. Until I paid for his items, he was there for a few minutes. Everyone else ignored him. After I paid for the items, my friend said it was a nice thing to do. I asked if they would have done the same, and they said no. It changed my outlook that day. Whenever I see someone who needs help, I always try and do what I can. Story 35, a female IT person at work had a panic attack. No one did. I dumped my work and ran to the rescue. I grabbed ice out of the work refrigerator, put it on her forehead, tightly held her hand, and dragged over a department garbage can so that she could vomit into it. Selfish. Why didn't they move? Story 36, I'm a male cheerleader. There's a female cheerleader who was the coach's daughter on my high school squad. She was a total. No one voted for her to be the captain, but she was anyway. One day, I told her to shut up. Her face was worth it. Story 37, stop a guy from punching his girlfriend in a drunk rage at a central station in Copenhagen. Once I stepped in, a lot of other people followed my lead, but only after I intervened. Story 38, at a frat party. One of the guys was beyond shit-faced and trying to pick fights with everyone there. When he grabbed my friend by the arm and tried to make a move is when I lost it. Shove him off of her, he swung, missed, I gave him a right hook, and he was out like a light. We dragged him into one of the rooms and put him in bed. Story 39, not me, but my friend during a game of Cards Against Humanity. We were playing with a group of friends, 2 of whom used to date. The girl who used to be part of the pair pulled a black card labeled, "Was the reason my last relationship ended," and the room became silent as everyone's eyes wandered between the old couple before my one friend said, "Well, this is awkward," and the game continued as before. Someone had to break the silence. Sorry for the quality. I'm on mobile and kind of a bad storyteller. Story 40, some girl was telling this other girl how useless she was and that no one liked her. I stepped in and it went like this: "Me, chill out, meanie. What are you doing? Go away, me. I was hoping you'd stop, but everyone looking over here thinks you're a very large and irritating. Nice girl, would you like to sit with us?" She did. Story 41, calling people out on their blatant bullying. Those people told my friend's boyfriend he was cheating on him. He was such a nice guy and didn't deserve to go through what my sociopathic friend was putting him through me. And my buddy had a lot of mutual friends I don't talk to anymore because I guess I'm a snitch. The 2 are back together. Sometimes I wish I never opened my mouth. Story 42, I was at a party where a girl was out on the balcony, smoking a cigarette by herself. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a tall little flame go up, and I thought, wow, that's an intense lighter flame. It took me half a second to realize her hair was on fire, so I ran out there and smacked that girl's head to put out the fire. It turns out that she was very intoxicated, and she singed her eyebrow hairs and some of her bangs. The funny thing is that after I smacked her head and asked if she was okay, she just went, "Bitch, I'm fine," and kept smoking her cigarette. Story 43, so whoever will still see this, relish in my agony. Grade 10 Spanish was the worst thing I've ever done, ever, more than that 9 hours I stayed up puking guts out over a toilet bowl. This incompetent, bigoted of a teacher decided she was going to teach us when she could barely speak English. Oh, we have a question. Shed, just repeat what the textbook said. Real helpful. The for brain, she was decided she was going to drop a student's grade from an A to AB simply because she wasn't Christian. Note, at my time, the only in school was they see she showed up late to a class, then used a bullshit excuse that she lived out of town. 3 of my classmates did, and they were there early. She was so bad when she left the room after the second week we decided that if anyone did moose antlers, we were going to either walk out of the class or talk to her as a class. For months into the semester, we had enough of her bullshit. The final straw was when she sent a kid to the office for yawning. The class was the first one in the morning. The cute Asian girl in the class hesitantly raised her hands to her head, and I looked around. No one said anything. A few others raised their hand to their head, and I sighed. I hate talking to people with authority, even if they really shouldn't. I got up and said, "Miss, we as a class would like to talk to you about some problems that we're all noticing." My heart was pumping. Long story short, that class was an hour of talking to her about a bunch of bullshit that she did. As it turns out, the kid who got sent to the office saw the principal on the stairwell about 10 feet from the classroom and was talking to him about the teacher. Somehow she wasn't fired until the year after. I wanted to murder someone for that. At the beginning of the next year, she had the audacity to go up to 2 of the students from the Spanish 10 class and ask them to take Spanish 11 because they were the 2 only good, smart Christian girls. My roommate freshman year of college claimed that she had been raped by a guy on the football team. I was with her the whole night and knew everything was consensual, no doubt about it. I had to call her out and notify the investigators. She had a boyfriend back home and maybe just felt guilty about it the next day. The worst part, this guy came from an underprivileged upbringing. Football was his only ticket to a degree. Although I had told authorities and multiple tests were done, he was still convicted. She was my friend, but the whole situation was very upsetting.